Well, one of the things I appreciate the most about yours, because I've been watching 9/11 movies for the last 10 years, you cover Obama, where I haven't seen too many films just dealing with that issue at all, and you have it in context with everything else, and it's very awakening. And every time, once you become awakened, you listen to the words of what he's saying, but then you see beyond those words, and he's like a propaganda machine almost.
Yeah.
And he, my suspicion, and there is some evidence by Wayne Madsen and other investigators saying that he was approached by the CIA back when he was a teenager in Indonesia, groomed for this position, sent to all the best schools, and even he studied, which really upsets me. I can't tell you the emotions, but when he became a constitutional law professor and came from that tact as a deception, it's disgraceful. And I can understand how people would be taken by him because of the surface, but then to see these actions, he must have a hard time with himself. And yet, if I was a black kid and approached and you give him the song and dance, I don't really blame Barack Obama for making the choices he made. He probably was misguided, and then you get so far into it, you can't go back. Yeah. You know, you're almost forced into this role. And so I have sympathy for him.
Well, you know, I still to this day have, and I think lots of people have an incredible hard time coming to grips with our leaders in our country being that evil. Can they knowingly look into the camera and just lie to the public like that? And you know, I loved Obama. I mean, I thought finally this man is coming. I voted for him, and I don't hardly ever vote. But I said, finally, we've got somebody that's going to, you know, do what he said. He's going to be all about change. He's going to be all about transparency. He's going to be all about openness. He's going to hold our politicians responsible. He's going to eliminate lobbyists. He's going to eliminate fat cats in the White House. He's going to, but and that was the saddest thing. That's why I went on so much in the film, because it was probably the greatest deception that I saw.
Right.
Was that, you know, his administration was filled with exactly the kind of people he said he wasn't going to do. It was full of fat, you know, Wall Street fat cats, insiders, and lobbyists. He's got 46 lobbyists on his staff, 46. And Summers made how many millions of dollars, and he's the head of the economy. And who's the Treasury Secretary? He was a former president of the New York Federal Reserve, I think.
Right.
He also paid back $26,000 in back taxes when he was put in charge. Gary Geithner, who was the head of the Securities and Exchange, but the one that handles derivatives, former partner in Goldman Sachs. I mean, there's not any place you can look, and in the film I try and articulate it, the key positions aren't being filled by key fat cats. Not to change anything, but to actually keep the status quo in place. And then you look at Ben Bernanke. You can't get more of an insider than him. He was nominated under Bush. He was continued under Obama. He didn't see it coming, and you know, he's supposed to be monitoring inflation and keeping inflation down and unemployment down, and they're both never been higher. And you know, there's a clip in the movie where I talk about where somebody interviews him saying, "What do you think?" And he said, "Well, I think that housing rates will stabilize and we'll continue to stay at full employment." This was like a year and a half before the meltdown. So there's no question. Then you look at the Fed and the IMF and the World Bank and forced austerity programs that are happening across the world. While we have a military that's out of control, we're in continual wars. We spend trillions in the military. We spend billions in bribes to the politicians. I mean, you go on and on. Yeah, we're supposed to be the ones to tighten our belts and suffer so that we can have, you know. So to me, it just seems that, you know, if you wanted to tax the hell out of the ultimately rich and get rid of these tax havens, Exxon and GE, I think, neither of them paid any taxes last year. And Exxon made $47 billion and paid zero in income tax.
Well, we can't say we weren't warned. On his way out of the administration, President Eisenhower talked about the military-industrial complex and how that, you know, we should be concerned about it. And John Hankey, in his film Dark Legacy, George Bush and the Murder of John Kennedy, pointed out that John F. Kennedy was making that turn, and he was planning on dismantling the military-industrial complex.
Money, in fact.
Yeah, right, and getting rid of the power of the Federal Reserve and the globalization. And he was refusing nuclear missiles to Israel and other proliferation directions. So once he was removed, which is why I go back there to 1963, it opened the doorway, and then the military-industrial complex took over, and they even got other industries with them, with the insurance and the pharmaceuticals, and we even have, you mentioned in your film about the fraudulent H1N1 flu scam, which probably is still going on, I've heard, this season from all the inoculations that they gave people.
Now, I'm going to give you some scary facts in reference to the H1N1 thing that I didn't put in the film because I didn't think people would be ready to accept it. But they're all factual, and people can go to Bloomberg, people can go, and everything I'm saying is verifiable readily, easily. There's a person named Jane Burgermeister.
Yeah.
That's it, thank you. And she was an investigative journalist for Nature magazine a while ago. And she started saying, or she came out with the fact that Baxter International, which is a pharmaceutical company, actually manufactured 72 kilos of flu vaccine that was tainted with bird flu. I mean, there's two types of flu. One's really lethal, but it's not very contagious, and the other is very contagious, but not very lethal. Right. And in order for them to mix, you have to have a weapons-grade certification. It's almost impossible to mix them, was what her point was. So how come 72 pounds of this stuff gets shipped to Europe? I mean, if it had not been accidentally picked up, millions of people could have died. So anyhow, and I'm not exaggerating by that claim, but anyhow, one guy accidentally, I think he's from Czechoslovakia, took one of the inoculations and shot them into ferrets, and they all died. And he said, oh, wait a second, what's going on? And he realized that the batch of flu vaccine that he had was tainted, and they started tracing by lot numbers all the way back, and they ended up reconstructing this thing. Baxter International said, oh, sorry, it was an accident, got out of it. No prosecution, no nothing. I mean, we're talking about a plague level thing. The WHO modified their the World Health Organization changed their definition of pandemic to be that any 4 people in 4 different parts of the world that contracted it can be called the pandemic. So they said a pandemic occurred. Our president declared a national state of emergency based on this flu pandemic because the WHO said it was a pandemic, we're told. But it also gave him martial law rights. I mean, he could have had the ability, the powers that he had, and I believe we're still under it, I'm not sure, gives him almost dictatorial powers. FEMA said they'd work with them. The military said they'd work with them. So she finally sued everybody. She sued Rockefellers and Obama and said, this is all a conspiracy. This is all a plan, way to reduce the population. So I never, and that FEMA, so I never really kind of went into it because it was just too scary and too frightening. But the sad thing is all the dots were there. Right. She maybe have connected them a certain way, but everything she said was true. I mean, a false flu pandemic was declared. Also, I never even mentioned that all the pharmaceuticals were given that dispensation. They could do anything and never be held accountable. Yeah. The head of the Human Service before this all started said, well, because this flu vaccine is going to be so scary, anybody who manufactures it can't be held liable for the quality of their products. Right.
And there's never been any proof that these vaccinations, the flu vaccinations, have been helpful for any age bracket.
Yeah, in fact, vitamin D has been proven as effective as a lot of this thing. Rumsfeld was the personal, got millions of dollars from his investments in Tamiflu. Right. So I mean, which is
questionable, and then there was a lot of fudging in getting that approved, and now they're still plugging in.
I know. So the more you look, that's why I don't want to look, to be honest with you. I really kind of want to close the book and just stop where I am. Yeah. Because as I say, it's going to be hard enough getting people to even be aware and start looking as far as I've gone. let alone as far as you've gone, let alone as far as what I'm finding. Every time I look, it just keeps getting darker, more sinister, and worrisome, and psychopathic. I mean, it gets beyond just this, not knowing what's going on, but into real scary stuff.